But someone says to me, you may have taken 6 weeks, but that's 15 years of lessons, 15 years of experience, 15 years of failures that allowed you to be able to launch in 6 weeks. And all the other businesses that both of you already run, those transferable skills allowed you to have the confidence and the expertise to be able to pull it off. I always say the past is a place of reference and not a place of residency. Balance is not a state that's meant to be maintained forever. Okay. So you may have balance in the moment, but you're not going to consistently have work-life balance. It's never 50-50. Relationships are never 50-50.
Today, I'm really excited to welcome an extraordinary woman who has spent over 20 years empowering entrepreneurs to build purpose-driven, profitable businesses. As an award-winning personal branding and business strategist and mentor, her clients have included the likes of Lloyds Bank, Meta, and Deloitte. She's a passionate advocate for women in entrepreneurship, and as the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Black Business magazine, she has become a leading voice in amplifying the success stories of Black entrepreneurs across the UK. It's an honour to have her join me in the studio today. Justice Williams MBE, welcome to the Social Corner.
Thank you, Daina. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I feel like your name, I cannot say Justice Williams without MBE. I feel like it's a disservice. But has that settled? It must have settled in now, because it's been how long since you received an MBE?
16 years.
16 years, wow.
16 years this year.
16 years. Yeah. Does it still hold the same meaning for you as it did back then?
I don't want to sound ungrateful, but no.
No, I don't. I think you've...
Yeah, I think I was 28. And obviously coming from the community that we come from, and then in the city of Birmingham, after growing up in like the affluent suburbs of Harborne, predominantly white and middle class, and then moving to the inner city, and then receiving the MBE was more of an honour for the work that I was doing, motivation, inspiration, and then hoping to platform, and amplify the voices of the young people that I was serving at the time. And so, because there wasn't people like me getting MBEs, and I think I became the youngest Black woman of Afro-Caribbean heritage in the history of the British Empire to receive an MBE from the Queen. And so, yes, it was an accolade and an honour. It was more so around amplifying the work, as I said. 16 years on, I'm older, wiser, and I ask myself the question sometimes, if I was to receive an honour today, would I actually accept?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Especially with the space that you're in at the moment.
Definitely.
What triggers that thought?
It's a conversation actually I had with my dad when I received the MBE. When I told my mum, her response was, "Lad, I'm have to go get a hat for go meet the Queen. Goodbye." There's not congratulations.
Yeah.
And obviously my dad's more bum Babylon. Straight up and play. Yeah. So it was that complex navigation, obviously, what the atrocities of the British Empire, but somebody in my late 20s, advocacy, frontline, doing the work that I was doing, which also was amplified for the work that I was doing through First Class Youth Network with Nathan and Sabrina. It was more about what can this do for our community rather than what this means to me. And I always say the past is a place of reference and not a place of residency. You can't live there. So I can't change the past, but I can actually have a part in actually changing the future. And so using that to amplify the voices of the young people, open doors.
Yeah.
People treated me differently. Yeah. They received me differently. I was welcome into spaces that I probably wouldn't have been welcome into if I didn't have those letters after my name. And that's what it was more for. It wasn't necessarily, it didn't bring me riches that some people seem to believe, wealth, fame, or anything like that. Quite the opposite. Because again, it can be problematic. But I think now, when I'm more enlightened, more knowledgeable, it's a thing would it be required? I wouldn't have access to certain things back then. So when I first started out, there was no social media. So, if you wanted to build your brand, you was out in the newspapers.
Right.
You was attending events and at meetings and networking opportunities. You was on the radio, you was on the television. And so things are different now, where you can amplify your voices and advocate for change using social media, because we've got this global connectivity. with the internet that just didn't exist.
So we've crossed paths over the years, but I wouldn't say that I actually know you very well. And actually, it wasn't actually until recently, as I've kind of been doing a bit more of my own development, getting to know what I'm doing a bit more, that I was really able to tune in to the enormity of your work and its impact and that it's had really came into focus for me.
Oh, wow.
So particularly as a Black woman in business. So basically I started to pay attention.
Okay.
And I think a little over a year ago, I attended a personal branding seminar that you were running, and I heard you speak. And what really struck me was how you successfully had managed to, I'm going to use the word compartmentalize your journey into what was relevant to now and what was relevant to then. And the things that I'd probably been aware of you for before, no longer, that wasn't the story you were telling anymore, you know. And basically, you had moved on from what was, and I think that really plays into what you said about a place of reference rather than residence. In your opinion, as a personal branding and business strategist, do a lot of people get stuck in their own story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do, because it's what we call your origin story.
Yeah.
It's your why. It's the reason why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But your origin story is your origin story, but your brand story changes over time. So when I first started out, how old am I now? 44 years young. So
been great, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And co-founder of 2 kids. So 22 years ago, my brand story was completely different. I started off as a gifted child at the age of 10, going to grammar school on the weekends, doing science, English and maths, getting a place in grammar school, but not necessarily being able to go because my parents couldn't afford the uniform and all the other additional costs.
Okay.
But I went to a really good girls' school in Harborne, and I was going on to university to study law and politics, and left home. My parents got divorced, living by myself, grew up very strict, and then, you know, as I say, you broke out. And that led me to getting around the wrong people. And I wouldn't say that I got led astray, because I was a leader, leading people astray. But that meant that instead of graduating from the University of Life, I graduated from the university, I graduated from the University of Life, and instead of standing in front of, you know, the principal or, you know, benefactors of the university to collect my degree, I was standing in front of a magistrate, you know, and at 21, 22, was sentenced to prison for a very short period of time for something very minor, but that changed the trajectory of my whole life. So when I came out, my shift was, okay, well, you're not going to go and study law now, because the irony of it, you know, having a criminal record and studying law, that just wasn't a possibility. And back then, 22 years ago, being labelled as an ex-offender, you know, was something that people would just steer away from and avoid you. I'd moved from the suburbs to the inner city. I was now living in Handsworth. So now I've got B21 postcode attached to my name.
Instead of Harborne.
Thank you. Yeah. And so the unconscious bias of employers, criminal record from Handsworth, you know, and so I had to think, what do I want to do? And I started getting involved in youth and community work. I realised there were so many young people that didn't have the opportunities that I had growing up. I made certain choices and they didn't have choices. And so I wanted to be able to let them know there was so much opportunities out there without making the mistakes that I did. And so I remember working at a youth project, and we were receiving a lot of press and PR just because we were working with young people involved in gangs in Aston. And I remember being interviewed and talking about the work that I was doing. And like a good journalist, so what's your story? Tell me a bit about you. And so when I started to share my story, he started to perk up and started making more notes. What went from a little column and a byline in a newspaper became a double-page spread in the Saturday supplement of the Birmingham Post, which used to be a daily broadsheet, gone weekly now. And that was my first taste of press. And it's the story that sold, but that story is no longer relevant. That's 22 years ago. And that's why I say the past is a place of reference and not a place of residency, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. No. Who knows where I would have been? Some high-flying, jet-setting lawyer, criminal lawyer, the irony. But yeah, here I am. And so my work evolved over time because I had children And even through that process of navigating motherhood and business, I attracted a different audience, because during those period of time from 22 to 30, I was a young person. I was single. I was out and about, mixing and mingling. I was on the front line. I was, out there advocating for young people and social change. And then I had to shift, because I couldn't be as risky, because now I have a young child. I became a single parent and attracted a new audience. And then women were looking at me saying, well, how do you do it? How do you still do what you're doing and still raise a child by yourself? And still, I saw you at 10 Downing Street, and I saw you doing this, and I saw you doing that. And so the brand story changes now, because it's about navigating business and entrepreneurship as a mother, and also battling the stereotypes of Black single mom in Birmingham, and my background and my history as well. So it does evolve.
Were you aware that it was evolving at the time?
No, I didn't even know what personal branding was when I did that first
You were
interview.
just going through.
I was just like, people says, I want to talk to you, want to interview you. And I'd say yes to everything, because for me, it was about representing the young people that I was serving. It wasn't about me and getting my story out. But that's when I understood, now looking back. I always say to people, if I knew then what I knew now, my journey would probably be so much different. But I kind of stumbled along, and I didn't really know about personal branding until at least probably about a good 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'd been building my personal brand, but just unintentionally.
Yeah.
Winning awards, being an advocate, speaking to the press, being on boards, but I didn't know anything about personal branding back then.
So you were just kind of just going through the motions. I want to just backtrack a little bit, because you talked about being a leader.
Yeah.
And the question I was going to ask you is, like, what were some of the definitive characteristics you noticed about yourself as a young woman that enabled you, that have served you up until this day? Because when I'm thinking about, your experience, many people would have probably shied away from the limelight, not wanted to tell that story necessarily.
Definitely.
So what would you say was some of your defining characteristics that have brought you through, that you recognize in yourself from a young person?
I feel back then, you just can't care about what people think. If you're going to lead, you have to be an example. You have to lead by example. And sometimes that's people holding you to a higher expectation. But for me, it was just being authentic and being myself. I said at that point, being in prison, sitting in a prison cell, family disowning you to a certain degree, and then you look at your whole life flashing before you and thinking, okay, well, what's next? And I says to myself, you know what, God, I'm at rock bottom, and from here, the only way is up. So, all you can do is go out there and do the best that you can. And, this voice says to me, your job now is to be of service. When they say community service, that's exactly what it is. Or you've been sentenced to serve X amount of years in prison or whatever. And I always say to myself, I will always be of service, but I don't know how. And I just want God to help me to find my way. And that was it. I found my way, and I was just passionate about working with young people. And so for me, it was about being passionate about something, understanding your purpose, having a why. Like, why do you get up every day? Why do you do what you want to do? Starting from rock bottom, no money, living on job seekers allowance, which was back then was like £45 a week, living in a flat in Handsworth with no carpet and no wallpaper.
Wow.
Yeah, and sometimes literally having just toast to eat. I remember one time with me and my friend, like, we literally was running out of electric, and we knew that come 6 o'clock, the electric was going to run out. Quickly have a wash, get to bed. The electric's out.
Yeah.
We're on emergency credit until we can get our next money. And so when you've experienced nothing, I don't say I come from nothing, because I had great opportunities growing up. But when, my early 20s, it was like I had nothing, starting all over again. It's like, what have you got to lose?
Before that happened to you, because you've talked about purpose, and I want to get into that a little bit, but before you went through that experience, would you say you were purpose-driven or ambition-driven?
Ambitious and purpose-driven by my father's goals for me.
But they weren't your own?
No, he said, you're going to be a lawyer. This is This is your calling. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Go to school and find out what the steps that you need to take. And the careers advisor said, right, you need to go to college, do your A-levels, go to university. And when I looked into it more and more, I thought, this sounds like a bit of me.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Because back then we didn't have the internet. It was like careers advisor. You see a careers advisor and you make decisions on whatever else. And so I feel like now, if I had a choice, it would be something creative that I would have got into. Because I loved writing, I loved reading.
Yeah.
I think I would have probably gone into journalism.
So I guess I'm wondering how, when you started to connect youth and community work with where you were, how was that purpose being kind of, how was it manifesting in the work that you were doing at that point?
So it started off with coming out, and then my friend took a salon right on Villa Cross.
Okay.
And that's not necessarily like the most safest or affluent place to be in the early 2000s. And I just started helping out. And then my friend, who was living with me at the time, this minibus used to come and pick her up on a Thursday. And she used to just disappear for a few hours. And he used to say, what's this minibus? Where are you going? And she's like, I'll go to this youth project, come along. And so I thought, in my early 20s, I want to be in a youth project, that's like for younger people. And she goes, no, I think there's some great work. Maybe you come and volunteer. So I went along and I sat in on a session, and they were doing a powerful exercise. It was Reverend Robin Thompson and Carver Anderson.
Yeah.
And they were doing a powerful exercise about who am I? And it's who am I as a child? Who am I as a sister or brother? Who am I as a young person? And it was just diving deep into, the subconscious of these young people. It was just really powerful. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like this. And I just really got involved and I said, is there any way that I can volunteer and get involved? And it was a Young Disciples Youth Project. I just decided to get heavily involved. It was based under a Christian charity, but it was not faith-based as such. And I know that they just needed help with a lot of things. And I just had these natural skills. And I just was passionate about it. I just found like, wow, this is amazing. Because sometimes in life we say, we don't know what our passions are. And that's why I always say to young people, try lots of different things that you enjoy and your passion will naturally find you. And I just came to a place I was like, wow, I enjoy being in this space. I enjoy listening to these conversations. I enjoy being around these great men who are mentoring these young people. Let me stick around and see where this goes. And then they needed someone to help out with the admin. I was a good organizer, a good person that had skills. I used to volunteer my mum's youth program. So that's probably what helped when I was 14. And I used to read the news on my mum's radio show. It was pre-recorded on a tape cassette. Okay. And so I think that's where my speaking and things came from. And so all these skills came to the forefront. And it was just history from there. And I just heavily got more involved. And then they offered me a job.
But what did that time help you develop within yourself? That would set you up for the next stage of your journey?
Getting, I think, like learning and understanding that life is a learning university, is a learning facility, that you have to be willing to continue to invest in yourself, to learn and grow, to adapt with the times. Like, I think that's one thing that's really, really important. Another thing as well is that leaders have a vision and not everyone's going to see your vision. And that's okay. It's not their vision or their dream to see. But you have to galvanize people to actually buy into that vision and to be able to trust you that you're going to lead them to where they need to go. And that's what real leadership skills are. It's also back then as well, you was a risk taker. There was nothing that I used to be scared of doing. And I was a quick decision maker. You have to make a decision whether to do something or not to do something. But I think that I know that successful people make decisions quickly. And so for me, I learned the power of yes. Like when people used to ask me, do you want to come here? Do you want to speak here? Do you want to do that? Do you want to partner? I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
Did you ever say yes to too many things?
Yes.
Okay.
So I do.
Sometimes there's power in no as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've experienced 2 episodes of burnout in my career.
Wow.
Yeah, and that just knocked me out for months.
When you say episodes, that's like extreme.
Yeah, like
moments.
Yeah.
Months.
Yeah, that then kickstarts depression and like you just can't get out of bed.
Yeah. Like
you're overwhelmed with the things, you're just shut off from the world, you don't want to answer your phone. Yeah, because sometimes that we don't, and especially as Black women, we always put ourselves last often, especially as a mother. And so we don't necessarily put the right boundaries in place. And that allows us to say yes to too many things when really the answer should be no. And I always say to people, learn the power of your no before you learn the power of your yes.
Yes. Oh, brilliant. Amen. That leads me nice into this next part, because I really want to talk about you as a woman in business, and you know, what you've learned in that space as well, because I imagine there must have been some kind of definitive turning point or something that happened in your life where you felt actually something needs to change here. And what was that for you? Did that happen?
Yeah.
And what was it for you?
It was having a child.
Right.
Yeah, I had my son 2 months before my 30th birthday, and it just gave me just a different outlook on life, a different purpose, a different sense of drive. And it was interesting to see the dynamics, how society positioned women in business who had children, and it's very much, children should be seen and not heard. And obviously things are changing slowly but surely, but just the barriers and the challenges that you face trying to juggle it all. But it also means that you're excellent at time management skills, excellent at multitasking, although that's not a thing that you should really be focusing on too much. And yeah, you just have a different sense of drive. And I think that was like a pivotal turning point for me, for sure.
So I suppose when we ask the question, why support women, it's just easy to say because I'm a woman myself. But truthfully, the challenges for women in business are probably much deeper than that. Your Elevate membership and personal branding accelerator have supported countless women. What are some of the common challenges that you come across that women are facing or present to you? And can you relate to them in any way?
Sure. The confidence gap is the biggest one.
That's always the one, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's the number one reason that holds women back from success.
Where do you think that's stemming from?
Multiple places. So some of it could be from your childhood. It could be from societal expectations, the role of a woman in society. It could be from cultural norms. And so culturally, people of colour have a different perception of where women's role fits in society, from the way you dress, the way you speak, the people that you should be around, the types of businesses you should be doing. A woman's sometimes place should be in the home and raising children. And so all these pressures compound, and it leads to what we call limiting beliefs. And those limiting beliefs are what hold people back. And it's about, you end up self-sabotaging. So when opportunities come, rather than taking them, you say no instead of saying yes, although those opportunities could take you further in your business. You have, those mindset gremlins that tell you that you're not good enough. Who are you to speak out? Who are you to be confident? And it's about reframing that and letting you know that actually you've been given a gift and a talent. And actually you not showing up means that the people that need you the most are the ones that are going to lose out. But definitely mindset, definitely confidence. Those are the things that hold women back. I think there was research showing that if a woman has 9 out of 10 of the qualities to go for a job, she won't go for it because she's missing 1 out of 10. A man could have 4 or 5 out of 10. He'll be like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'll wing it. I'll get through it. And he has the confidence and the mindset and the belief. And so unfortunately, we live in a world that's not equal. We live in a world that's not fair. And so because of that, those things hold us back as women. Because if we were in power, if we were in all the decision-making roles, if we were in the boardroom, if we were sitting on the boards of all these investment funds, our mindset would be different.
Did you notice that in your own journey? So when they come and, when you've heard some of these things and you've heard the stories behind them, has there been some synergy there that you've been able to, because I guess what I'm asking is, how do you help women through that with what you do? Because I imagine you have to be able to relate.
Yeah, definitely.
What they're saying.
Definitely. And so for me, I know that I went through that period of them when I got my MBE. A lot of people were like, who does she think she is?
Yeah.
What has she done that's so special that she deserves such an honor? What makes her so special? And so sometimes you take on those stories And I always say to people, they're stories and they're not facts, but we take on those stories and we internalize those. And we say, well, actually, who do I think I am?
Right.
I'm not so special. What's so special about me? And so if you don't have the right support systems, you don't have the right mentorship and guidance, then it can hold you back. And, I did a post recently and it says the evil twins. Have you ever been visited by the evil twins? Do you know the evil twins? Perfectionism and procrastination.
Oh, them.
Yeah, those are the evil twins. Those are the things that hold us back. We sometimes strive to be too perfect. We say, okay, let me read a bit more. Let me do a bit more training. Let me, lose a few more pounds before I show up on camera. Let me, get this perfectly right. And then we procrastinate. But procrastination sometimes is a coping mechanism. It could be a trauma response as well. It's how we kind of protect and safeguard ourselves. And so when you've gone through things in your life and your confidence has been knocked, or you failed at something and you haven't had the support to pick you back up, then you hold yourself back and that confidence doesn't grow. And so you have to, it's about unlearning those stories and separating fact from fiction.
How did you do that work for yourself?
Getting a mentor.
Right.
That was powerful. So my mentor was Carl George, MBE, and he mentored me from my early 20s. I still consider him a mentor till this day. And surround yourself with a supportive peer group and a peer network of other like-minded people that are on your journey. Because if you're surrounded by naysayers and people that say, no, you can't do that, who do you think you are? Then, you're going to hold yourself back. So it's about people that are on the same wavelength with you, that are supportive of you, that encourage you, that motivate you. And most importantly, it's all that keep you accountable.
Yeah.
So it's about community, it's about mentorship, it's about also being willing to do the work, because knowledge is power and we have this fear of the unknown. And so it's about learning and investing in yourself, being willing to invest in to learn and know and get those skills that you're lacking so that you can grow and be the best version of yourself.
I was actually doing a bit of research and I found that women's startup activity rates have risen from 6.1% to 10.4% between 2001 and 2025. 23. However, despite that rise, the rate of investment into female-led businesses is shockingly low, especially in comparison to our male counterparts, which is actually really scary. Do you see a change in this area coming soon? Because you're very much immersed in that world. So what do you see, what is happening and what do you see happening as well?
I think the first step is acknowledging it and looking at the facts. But also as well, what I've noticed about society is always the marginalised people who are supposed to give the answers to the problem. When we went through the whole tragedy of George Floyd, it's like, why are you looking to Black people to educate you about why Black lives matter? It's the same thing with women. We need men as allies. The men are the ones that hold the position of power. The men are the ones that sit on the board of the investment fund. The men are the one that can be inviting women to have a seat at the table. And so things are changing, but it's going to take time. It's the same thing with gender parity. To get gender equity, it's going to take, it's talking about decades worth of work. So nothing is going to happen overnight, slowly but surely. And yes, there are a lot of women out here that are doing the work, that are now sitting on investment funds or starting their own funds. But there's so much work to be done. And then you look at that figure and then you take Black-owned businesses and it's 0.2% of Black-owned businesses within the period of 2009 to 2019. We're given venture capital investment, 0.2%. And then we look at Black women, 0.02%.
Wow.
It's just shocking. And so, again, if we are not the ones making those decisions, there's lots of reasons why, and it's not just about, it's about unconscious bias, lack of understanding. It's the same with women-owned businesses. If a woman develops a wellness app that can change millions or even billions of lives, and she's pitching it, and it's about women's menstrual cycle, for example, to a board of white middle-class men who are in their probably late 20s and have got money but not necessarily a wife or children or could relate to them, it's like, what do I know about this to want to invest in this brand? Or this is not something that I'm really interested in. And so there's a massive disconnect there as well. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that space.
You've worked with some global brands like such as Lloyd's Bank, Meta, and Deloitte, to name but a few. But what are some of the key takeaways you've learned about bridging personal branding with business success in corporate environments? Because I think a lot of people want to do that, but are not quite understand how they transfer themselves into that space. What have you learned? In
business, the most important rule in business to me is that business is about relationships,
Right.
and it's about building those relationships with the right people. A lot of people go into partnerships with what can I get, what can I gain, rather than what can I give. And I think that's the biggest challenge and the biggest mindset shift that you have to have. Any corporate that wants to do business with you is looking at something that's going to benefit them. So while you're looking, how is it going to benefit you? You should be looking at how's this, what I offer going to benefit them. You want to have a win-win relationship with people, because that way you win, they win, we all win. And so it's about building the relationships with the right people, because these corporations some of them are hundreds of thousands of employees. So it's about connecting with the right person that for you to achieve the goal that you set out to do. And so you can network via LinkedIn, so using social media and connecting with the right people. And again, now showing up in person in real life and meeting people and adding value, joining the conversation, position yourself as an expert and position yourself as the best person to solve the problem or challenge that they have and give them the transformation or the result that they desire.
That word expert, I think it sounds, to me it sounds a little bit daunting. And that might be me going back to what we were talking about earlier,
the confidence
stuff. But when we talk about positioning ourselves as the expert, it kind of comes across as I am the number one person who understands everything in this field. That's how I understand.
Okay.
How do you define it when you talk about that? Is there something that we should be embodying as experts, or is it leaning towards what I was talking about?
So I say you can be an expert by experience, or expertise. So when we say experience, is that you have lived experience of something and you've gotten results for either yourself or for someone else. And so if you were in a room with 20, 30 people, what is it that you know more about than most people in that room? You are an expert by default, because you know more about that subject or that topic than everybody else, whether you've lived through it and had the experience or whether you've got the expertise. And that could come through qualifications, training and certification. But a lot of people feel that you need to have tens of years, decades of knowledge and a PhD or £1 million turnover to be an expert. No, it could just be that you are 10 steps ahead of somebody else. 10 years ahead.
Yeah. Is it contextual as well, though? For example, if you're in a room with 30 people and you're the expert in that room, but you could move to another room and you're not the expert, but they're all in the same field, do you still continue as the expert? How does that work?
Yeah. So you're still an expert, but not necessarily for that audience.
Right.
So it's about being an expert and the go-to expert for your ideal client, for your ideal audience.
Yeah.
So you are now in a room of experts. You're all experts, but they're not your ideal audience. And so to them, what can you teach me? You're not the expert. So you've got to think about what problem or challenge am I solving, or aspiration or desire am I satisfying for my ideal client? How do you position yourself then as the go-to expert for them?
Right. Okay. So speaking of business, well, we've kind of been in there anyway. I want to talk about your most recent venture, the Black Business Magazine. Don't say it's a venture, actually. Your most recent business, Black Business Magazine, of which you are the editor-in-chief. And to be honest, firstly, I want to find out how this came about. Because I know that actually the print industry is not new to you, is it? It's something you had already been in before. So how did the inspiration for the Black Business Magazine come to be? And how did it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier about the work that I was doing with young people. And being an advocate for young people. And so in my late 20s, I remember being invited to all these different spaces and different rooms. This was shortly before I got my MBE, and I thought, all the stories in the media and the press about young people are negative. Why are they not showcasing the positive stuff that we're doing within our community? Is it because we're young? Is it because we're from the inner city? Is it because of the colour of our skin? Is it because it's not newsworthy enough? Why don't we create our own media? Why don't we create our own magazine? So here was I.
Okay.
So, okay, I can create a magazine. You know, it's interesting because when I launched the magazine, people are like, oh, where did you study journalism? Because it was like, you wouldn't start a magazine without having a degree in journalism. And I didn't have a degree in journalism. I had no degrees, you know, as we discussed earlier. But it was something that I was passionate about. I got the university involved, Birmingham City University, as a partner. And I worked with a lot of their students to actually bring the magazine to life. But at that time, when we launched in 2009, we were on the cusp of a recession, 2008, 2009, that I didn't know that was coming. And one of the worst industries that was hit was the publishing industry. And so a lot of the bigger publications literally folded and closed their doors forever. And we were just on the cusp, I would say, on the digital revolution. So digital wasn't really a thing. There wasn't digital magazines and things like that. It was just kind of starting to grow. And so after 2 editions, you know, with no degree, no formal expertise, and being an introvert and not really wanting to go out and get sales and get advertising and be that kind of that cold, hard saleswoman, I was like, this can't continue. So we had to close our doors. And I kind of felt at the time like, oh my gosh, what a failure. Like, wow. You know, we started this magazine, Red Carpet, great, was the first kind of like youth magazine in the Midlands. And we lasted 2 editions. And so going from a team of 40, an office, you know, of 12, to everything being piled up in my flat, my apartment in town.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember not even being able to pay our rent at the office, and I had to do a midnight flint with my friend and pack up the office. We had 24 hours to get out and get all our stuff out. And we had a 2-door Corsa. We had to fit it all in. And so we had to go back and forth, 12 trips we took. I remember waking up the next day and just feeling aching all over. I'm like, what a fall from grace. You know, what an absolute failure. And I said to my friend, oh my gosh, like, this is so embarrassing. This is humiliating. And he said, you're not that special. And I took offense. I was like, what do you mean? And he was working with me on the magazine, Felix, he was the creative director. He says, but you're not that special. He goes, look at the millionaires and the billionaires that have failed businesses. They even declare bankruptcy. And they're like, wow, I'm bankrupt. It didn't work. And then they just go and build again.
Next thing, yeah.
You think that everybody is so concerned about what you've done and what you've not done, but you're more concerned. If they can build and do again, why can't you? Because you ain't a billionaire, you ain't a celebrity, you know, you ain't a public figure. So just start over. You don't need an office.
Did that resonate with you?
It did, but I just thought, you know what, now I was too traumatized
At the time.
I need some time to process and heal. And so, yeah, I was just like, it was like 40 people, and then everybody just went on their way, on to the next. And it was just me and my one friend was left. She helped me to unpack the office. And then she obviously moved on, and it was just me by myself. And a few years, I was like, yeah, not quite ready. I knew it was before its time now. But back then, I was just passionate about it. I think I'm an early adopter. I'm a bit of a visionary. I see things that I needed, but it was way, way before its time.
You saw it.
And it took 15 years for it to come full circle, and then to launch Black Business Magazine. And
which you are co-founder of.
Yes, with Dr. True Powell.
Dr. True Powell. So how did that relate? Because you two work very closely together, don't you? So how did that come to
So I've known True for, since before he got married, that was years ago. And so over the 15 years of me seeing him in business and network and all the careers and jobs that he'd done, we kind of just was in that same circle, young Black professionals in Birmingham. There's a small, quite close-knit community of us, about 10 of us. And so we kind of worked together. And then in lockdown, we both jumped on Clubhouse together. And we literally spent all day in Clubhouse. And Clubhouse was that new social media app. It's like audio app. And we were like, we just found ourselves in rooms and spaces together. And we would just talk and say, why don't you, and I said to True, why don't you start a club? Because you're really into the creative entrepreneurship. And I just helped him to build a club. And we built a club to 20,000 members within 6 weeks.
Wow. And
then we were putting on stages with all sorts of amazing people and public figures where people would sit in the audience we're doing in conversations with. And it was great. And that started the beginning of our working relationship. Although we weren't getting paid, we were building community together. And then I was one of the founding members of the Black-owned economy. And so I joined the community when there were less than 5,000 members on Facebook in light of what happened with George Floyd, just to bring Black businesses together so we can intertrade and support each other.
Right.
And so I got heavily involved in the leadership of that and grew that community to over 150,000 members within 18 months.
I was not aware you were a founder of that, a co-founder.
Yeah, I wasn't the founder, so that was JD. She was based in Leeds, but I joined when it was less than 5,000, and they invited me onto one of their Spotlight Sunday events just to talk about business, because I was like, the Black business community need to learn the skills to run a proper business. And after that first session, she was like, oh my gosh, Justice, we've had so much messages for people say you need to bring back justice. And I was like, I don't want to come back. Like, give the opportunity to somebody else. I can't be on there every week delivering something, but let me come and start something and bring other people in and give other people the opportunity. So I started this thing called the Tuesday Learning Live, which was every Tuesday evening, bring on an expert to teach the Black business community, whether it's about finance, marketing, social media, personal branding. And they were like, listen, we need help with the community. And I could see gaps. And I previously ran a community, although mine was only like 2,000 people, and says, right, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to manage this. And they were like, we need you to be part of the team. And then we were contacted by Meta, which was Facebook. And they were, look, we've got this community accelerator program. We'd love you guys to apply. And so I helped them with the application and we applied. And we were one of the successful organisations, one of 20, I think in the UK or Europe. And we got selected to be the recipients of $50,000 and to go through the accelerator program. And so it was myself and JD that were invited to attend the sessions. But then she found out she was expecting another child. And she was like, Justice, I need you to step up and take over. I was like, oh, okay then. And so that's what I did. And part of that was amplifying and having these activations. And one of them was an in-person event, which was a startup summit that we decided to do in Leeds. And I was like, okay, I can't deliver this by myself. Who do I know that's really good at events? Oh yeah, my friend True. And so I brought True in. I said, look, True, I need you to come in and be a consultant on this project. And I know that True was so passionate about Black people and the Black business community and elevating Black businesses. And so we worked together. That was the first taste of kind of working together on a project. And his way of working and my way of working worked really, really well. He's an extrovert. He loves to be out there, meetings, doing the deals. And I'm an introvert. I like to fall back, be more introspective and work kind of behind the scenes. And so that worked really, really well. And so that was just a natural evolution. I'd also worked with True on an award ceremony together for a very long time. And so we already had that kind of business working relationship where I could see how he kind of worked, and he was very professional. And yeah, it was just like we very have that kind of synergy in terms of the way that we work. And so it was just like a natural fit that the magazine came about in 2023. And so he launched his podcast previously. I just had launched mine, and we didn't have any kind of plans that year to work together in like that way or to even launch a magazine. And he had a business relationship with Lloyds, and I had a developing relationship with Lloyds. And so what had happened was they'd approached him about an idea for an initiative and a project that they wanted him to head up, that he wasn't so comfortable just kind of heading up by himself in terms of the idea that they had. He felt that they needed like an organisation or a business behind it. So he came to me with the idea, and it was around just profiling, spotlighting Black entrepreneurs in the Midlands that had kind of scaled beyond the 6, the 7 and the 8 figures. And so I said, oh, it's a great opportunity to actually launch a magazine. Because a few years ago, I'd spoken to a friend about launching a magazine, but that person wasn't the right fit or the right, my intuition was like, they're not the right business partner for me. And so when I spoke to True, I was like, I think we can do this. And he was like, okay, don't really know much about publishing. I said, it's fine. You be the CEO. I'll be the editor-in-chief. You know about partnerships, sponsorships, and all that good stuff. You take care of that and leave all the content to me. And
Did you feel excited about that? Because you've obviously got to reignite that journalism kind of passion that you had.
Definitely. And, you know, we were given 6 weeks to launch.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, we had 6 weeks from when we had the meeting, before even the money came through. The money didn't even actually come through till after we'd launched. Because obviously processes, if you know anything about corporates, it takes a process to go through due diligence and getting on the supply chain and things like that. And so for me, it was a interesting process. But someone says to me, you may have taken 6 weeks, but that's 15 years of lessons, 15 years of experience, 15 years of failures that allowed you to be able to launch in 6 weeks. And all the other businesses that both of you already run, those transferable skills allowed you to have the confidence and the expertise to be able to pull it off. And so when we did the photo shoot, when we were like 4 weeks out from launch, we didn't even have an editorial calendar, a plan. We didn't have not one word written on a piece of paper. We didn't even have time on the day to actually do the interviews that we'd planned with the 7 people that appeared on our front cover of the Midlands Shaping the Future edition. Wow. And literally, I did that edition by myself. I didn't have any writers, any editorial assistants, any proofreaders. It was just like, let's get it done. And bless him, True was like, is there anything I could do to help? I was like, just leave me, because I'm a person that sometimes I just need to go into myself and just undistracted and get stuff done. And so I said, True, you just kind of work with the partnership, help with the initial investment to kind of fund it, to get it off the ground, which he did, while we're waiting for the money to come through from Lloyd's. And Lloyd's had an event where they invited the CEO of Lloyd's Bank down to Birmingham, and they were like, we need it to be ready for this day. And so, we had to kind of turn up and show up and produce the magazine.
Wow. I mean, I suppose there's a question in there that I wasn't planning to go to yet, but talking about balance and, how, because that's quite a highly stressful environment to be in, to be doing that. I mean, in hindsight, I imagine, would you have done that again? Well, because you had a date, so you had to do it. But how do you juggle all of this? Because there's business, you're a mom, you're in a relationship, and then there's family life on top of that. How do you make it make sense and look after and kind of prioritize well-being?
For your first question, I would do it all again. It was exciting. I loved it. I loved the experience, loved the adrenaline that comes with it. And I feel like I'm a person that I work fast. And so I feel like some people just struggle to keep up. And I remember a post came up on social media, the memories come up, and it was like 2009. And I put, if you're going to work with me, you got to know how to kind of work fast. I can't work with weaklings or weasels. And I laugh now because I thought, wow, it was a bit hard. I'm a much nicer person now. I've honed my leadership skills. But what I realized is that when I did the second edition, which was over the summer, and I was actually involved, I still do youth and community work till this day. It's just stuff that I don't necessarily publicise. So I was running a youth programme as well for young people over the summer for 160 young people. And I was also doing interviews in the evening, and I was like, I can't do this again. And we're working on our Black History Month special, 216-page magazine, and I had no writers, no proofreaders, no anything. It's just a designer. And True was in Jamaica, so you're just rubbing it in my face. He was sitting in Jamaica, at Duns River Falls and eating jerk chicken. And so for me, I was like, nah, I'm not doing this again. We need help. And I was like, first thing we need to do, outsource, get a team, start building a team. And so we brought on a part-time editorial assistant, because I just realised I didn't have a holiday. My kids didn't have any holiday. Bless them, they came along and they were involved in the youth programme, and they enjoyed all those activities and the trips and things like that. So they had a bit of fun in the school holidays, but I'm very, very protective of my time. And prior to that, I don't typically work school holidays. And so it's about finding that balance. And when I say balance, balance is a state that's not meant to be maintained forever. And so
say that again.
Balance is not a state that's meant to be maintained forever. So you may have balance in the moment, but you're not going to consistently have work-life balance. It's never 50-50. Relationships are never 50-50. Your time is never 50-50. Partnerships are never 50-50. And so it's about work-life integration. How do you integrate your work and your life together? There will be seasons when you're building a business or a startup, that's what we were doing, when we don't have fun, when we don't have the best self-care, when we're not going on holiday, where we're not being able to clock off after school run and say, oh, great, we're good. We can enjoy the rest of our evening and put our feet up and cozy on the sofa. We can't do those things because, unfortunately, you have to be invested in your business and you have to be able to grow. And so it's about having boundaries, having that protective space, that time, investing in your health, which I'm learning even more because my partner, he's big in his health, mindset, wellness, psychology, all those things.
Yeah.
So I'm now learning that I have to really take care of myself and prioritize those needs.
What have you seen the entrepreneurial landscape evolve for Black businesses, and what kind of trends what are you seeing at the moment?
Oh, definitely. So been in business for over 20 years, massive changes. We talk about businesses, we talked about what we typically see, the barber shops, the Caribbean food shops. Those businesses are great. They are the pillars and the kind of foundations of our community. But there's so much more to Black businesses. You know, one thing about doing Black Business Magazine is just giving us access to a whole network and opened up other people's eyes to Black businesses and the perceptions that we are more than athletes, we're more than entertainers, we're more than just the Caribbean food shops and the barber shops, although they play a staple part of our community. You know, we have businesses that are investment funds, we have businesses that are in tech, we have businesses that are in sustainability, we have businesses in every single industry, and things are changing. But unfortunately, we are already starting on the back foot historically. We are what we call a historically marginalized community. And we don't need to go back 400, 600, 800 years to know why that happens. And so we don't have the bank of mom and dad. We don't have generational wealth. We don't have certain things living here in the UK because this is not our natural home. This is not where we were born, so to speak, or where our ancestors come from. And so we're already starting on the back foot. You know, there was a saying, what does it say? No Irish, no Blacks, no dogs. That's where today. Yeah, that's the same category we're put into. And so therefore, like, the banks don't even want to lend us money to buy houses. That's why we don't have home ownership to the level of other community groups.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you've touched on this, because actually, you know, I think it's really important that we highlight that investment finance into business. I mean, we talked about that earlier.
Definitely.
It is extremely low. And I suppose attitudes of Black businesses in the Black community also towards investment finance is probably not where it should be either, because it's not typically something we share or depend on. How is the Black Business Magazine kind of tackling, changing that narrative? And are you seeing a difference in how investment banks are actually approaching Black businesses now? Are they understanding the purpose and the need for them in that respect?
It's about giving information, insight and knowledge, because you don't know what you don't know. And so a lot of the Black business community didn't think that finance was accessible to them. And in some regards, it still isn't. And it's not as accessible or equal or fair. And who knows if it ever will be. But unfortunately, if you don't have the knowledge to know what's out there, you're just going to do the best you've got with what you have. You know, which is one of our daily affirmations today. We'll do the best we have, the best we can with what we have. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been doing the best we can with what we've got. You know, palm the hand and those things amongst our credit union. But if you really want to scale, sometimes you can't be what you can't see. And so our magazine's about creating those visible role models to show that, look, there's somebody who had €1 billion exit. There's somebody who had millions of pounds of investment. You can do it too. And then actually bringing the investors together with the Black businesses. And there are more now Black investment funds starting to slowly grow up. People like Black Seed Ventures, Lendo as well. And so these are run by Black people. And so when you'll see more people who are at the table making those decisions, it's also giving a sense of confidence to these Black entrepreneurs that actually there is finance available to us. You know, Lloyds Bank did research to show that actually there was a massive distrust within the Black business community. Because guess what? You'd go to the bank and you wouldn't be given a loan because you're Black. That was facts. You know, and so they're also, not just Lloyds, but the banking industry as a whole are doing what they can to try and change that and also educate their staff to remove unconscious bias. Who knows if that will ever be something that completely goes away?
I can only but hope.
Exactly.
I want to talk about another full circle moment for you, because congratulations are in order, because you've recently been granted a license to curate and host TEDx Ladywood Women. And that's happening this year, is that right?
21st of June.
21st of June. And the aim of it is to amplify underrepresented voices and inspiring audiences to take bold steps toward their goals. Now, the significance of this being, you gave your own TEDx talk about, what, 10 to 13 years ago. So how did this come around? And was it quite a surreal moment for you, actually, coming back to being on the stage to now curating the stage?
Because even when I got my first TEDx talk, it wasn't something I applied for. I actually applied for a ticket to go to TEDx.
Okay.
And they didn't respond to my tweet. And I was like, why are they not responding? And then I got an email and said, oh, can we have a meeting? I was like, do you have to actually interview to get a ticket to go to TEDx? I don't understand. But then when I met with the curators of TEDx Brum, they were like, you know what? We want you to actually be a speaker. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Wow. And just going through that process was just like, wow, an amazing experience for me. And just to be able to go on stage and, you know, be able to be a part of a TEDx, you know, I thought people like me get to do TEDx talks. So that was 13 years ago. And I was then invited in 2017 to do another TEDx talk, but I was at the time 8 months pregnant with my daughter, and it was way, way, way far away. It was like a 5-hour round trip, and I was like, nah, I don't think my body can handle it. So I declined. And then a few years ago, I was thinking, you know what, how do people actually get these licenses to do TEDx? Because I'm at this stage where I've won a lot of accolades and awards that have been prestigious. You know, I've been to 10 Downing Street multiple times, House of Commons, my MBE, Cosmopolitan Magazine, Most Inspirational Woman of the Year. And it's great and wonderful, but I'm at this stage where I want to be the platform for other people rather than being on the platform. And I was like, I want to create a TEDx experience for women because they have women, they have universities, they have youth, they have different TEDx licenses. And I decided to go for women because that's what I'm passionate about. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. That was like a few years ago. You know, and I was mentioned to my partner last year and I was like, oh, you know, I really want to go for this TEDx license. He's like, yeah, well, go on then. So I was like, really? He's like, yeah, what's stopping you? Go on, do it. Like 2025 is your year. You got to get out and be bold, no more playing small, you know, and, you know, I definitely have to thank him and give him like, you know, his flowers for giving me the confidence to say it again. Well, we talked about the confidence gap. Should I? Yeah. Is this me being too much? And it's like, no, you know, just do it. Like, think about the people who need this platform. And so I just applied in November, you know, and literally in a few weeks, I was granted the license.
Amazing. So we can expect that, is it being held at a particular venue?
Or to be confirmed. So to be confirmed, but it's going to be Saturday, the 21st of June. And it's a ticketed event. Our license only grants us to have up to 100 people in attendance. So we were looking to live stream and things like that, depending on sponsorship. But they are non-profit events. These are not commercially driven events. This is all non-profit. It's about ideas worth sharing. Ideas worth spreading.
And speaking of ideas worth spreading, and in 2023, you also have a book coming out. Yeah, right. About how to succeed on purpose. I mean, as if justice there's not enough going on here. You know, we're just adding this to the. But no, seriously, how? So tell. I'm kind of picking up from what we've already talked about, what this may embody, but tell us what this will be about. What's the book about?
Yeah, and going back to we talking about the confidence gap, I've been meaning to write this book for over a decade.
Oh gosh.
You know,
wow.
And again, 2023, and my partner saying to me like, okay, what's going on? And he's writing a book himself, and that kind of just, he's writing a children's book, and that just kind of spearheaded me to think like, what am I sitting down waiting for? You know, like I've got all this knowledge, these skills, these stories that need to be shared and put out into the world. And so How to Succeed on Purpose is it's a book, it's a go-to, it's a guide, it's to help women to succeed on purpose. I found that I spent a decade kind of figuring it out as I went along and unintentionally growing my personal brand and learning so many lessons along the way that I want to be able to collapse that to help other women to fast track their journey to success and their route to success. But part of that is unlearning and relearning, and also removing self-sabotage, overcoming trauma, going through a process of healing, just to get your mindset and your confidence in the space that actually, what is your purpose? What is your identity? What is the vision for your life? And how can you create your life and your business by design? And so that's what the book is all about.
It sounds really interesting. I can't wait for.
I'll make sure you
actually
get a
read it.
copy.
Yes, please.
And an invitation to the launch.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I will be there. And you've mentioned your partner a few times and your children. But one of the things that you talk about, and I think you mentioned this actually when I came to the personal branding seminar, is that family is really important aspect of your life.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it, said it was part of your personal brand, but I could go onto your social pages and see that you're talking about your children or your partner, and he sounds very encouraging. How does all of what you're doing fit into, we've talked a bit about balance, but fit into your family and what you're envisioning for your future when it comes to family?
Definitely. So I always say God first, family, and then business. And so they're part of that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's all about what do my children grow up and see and envision, and what kind of lifestyle are they going to live in? What world are we leaving for our children? I always say your life is your legacy. What does yours look like? And so for me, it's about creating that generational wealth, creating that family unit and that structure, but also creating our lifestyle by our design. And so I don't want to just be going through life. I want to grow as a person. I want to experience. I want to travel. I want to, enjoy my life while I'm doing it. And so that's why building your brand is not just about your business. It's about the lifestyle that you want to create. So when I work with my clients, I always start first, what's your personal goals? What's your dream? What's a vision for your life? Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? Are you still going to be sitting here in the UK? Do you see yourself on a beach? Do you see yourself in Africa? Do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself? What does life look like? And I think that society doesn't encourage us to dream enough. And that's what my business is called, Dream, Plan, Launch. You have to dream, you have to create that vision board for your life. And so my children and my family are so important to that, because I always say to people, you can have all the success in the world and you come home, and who do you come home to celebrate it with?
True.
Who's there to kind of champion you and to walk with you and to enjoy? Because I always say that if I was rich and successful and I had this Bentley and it had this pink interior, is my children going to remember when I've gone, oh, my mum's Bentley, it's the highlight of my life.
Yeah.
That pink interior just matched with my Instagram aesthetics. Are they going to remember all the memories, all the trips that we had, the holidays, the experiences and the memories that we created? Those things are more important to me than the material things that this world has to offer, because you're born alone, you will transition alone as well. You can't carry all those things with you. I see those things as nice things to have, and they are the byproduct of success, depending on what success means to you. But for me, success is time freedom, and it's financial freedom to be able to serve and to give back to other people and to be able to impact lives, but also to create my lifestyle by design with my family and to enjoy and ultimately be happy.
I started this interview and I described you as an extraordinary woman. I'm taking it back.
Okay.
I'm going to call you phenomenal.
Oh, wow.
Because I just think that everything you've talked about, everything that you've done, and how you've done it as well is so admirable. And I'm really, really inspired by your story and your journey. And it's not even it's just starting really in many ways in some of the more recent areas. So congratulations on everything. And one question that I ask all of my guests is how what they see for the next 5 years, how they visualize their social corner, and that being the corner of society that you are impacting through social development, through social impact. I mean, and just speaking on your own journey, especially in business, how you're really just turning the narrative on its head. What do you visualize? What do you see or want to see for your social corner in the next 5 years?
For my social corner for the next 5 years, I want to move from just wealth creation to legacy and impact.
Okay.
Because I feel that we often wait until, why do we have to wait till we're 60 or to the end of our lives to be thinking about those things? And while we still are able-bodied and of sound mind, there's so much more that we can do for other people that then become full circle and come back to us. And so I want to launch a foundation. And so that's in the process of kind of just helping to serve families and children from marginalized communities, disadvantaged backgrounds, and to help be a voice in eradicating child poverty, not just in the UK, in the Caribbean, in Africa, and in melanin-rich locations.
Melanin-rich locations, we like that. That term. Justice, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.